Junior year has this infamous reputation as being the year of high school. It's the year you become an upperclassman, take standardized tests, and start seriously looking at colleges. Junior year was, without a doubt, the most important year of my life thus far, but you couldn't find me writing a research paper or loading on the AP classes. Instead, I was sipping coffee in a little Dutch village. I spent my entire junior year as an exchange student to the Netherlands. I lived with the host family, picked up the Dutch language, and ate a whole lot of bread and cheese. And while I learned things such as how to correctly pronounce begeleidingsles and to navigate the Dutch train system, there were a few huge life lessons that championed my year. These are the 3 most important things that I learned from being an exchange student. I learned very early on what it meant to be alone, and I mean actually alone. Growing up in Lake Forest, my closest group of friends as a senior looked strikingly similar to elementary school, and I could probably name 99% of the people in my grade. Lake Forest is familiar. Cut to last year. I woke up in an unfamiliar bed, ate an unfamiliar breakfast, then rode an unfamiliar bike down foreign streets to a school where nobody spoke my language. And if that wasn't already quite the shock, at the end of the day, I would come home to a family that I did not know. It's impossible to convey exactly what this felt like, but essentially I was never relaxed or comfortable. And while I slowly became more acclimated to my host family and began to settle into this new life, those first few months were some of the hardest I've ever had. I spent a whole lot of time with myself those first 3 months, trying my hardest to learn while also becoming more and more confident in who I am as a person. I would come home from school after a long day of not understanding anything and just lay in my bed and cry. And don't get me wrong, there was never a single moment in which I wanted to go home or give up, but I've never felt like such an outsider. If those days of frustrated crying and zoned out classes taught me anything, they proved to me that being alone is nothing more than an opportunity to step into a greater version of yourself. It's just a side effect of adventure. Another huge learning curve for me last year was letting go of perfection. At home in the US, consciously or not, everything that we do is in the pursuit of perfection, whether it be physically, academically, or really anything. Moving to the Netherlands, I was comparable to a baby. I had to learn to speak again, become accustomed to a whole new culture, its social norms, and rely a lot on the people around me. When I landed in the Netherlands, I knew maybe 10 words of Dutch and I couldn't even pronounce them correctly. 1 week later, I was immersed in a school where every single one of my classes was taught in Dutch, and bet you can imagine how that went. And while I slowly began to pick up on more and more of the language, I was afraid to talk to people in Dutch. I wanted my Dutch to be perfect before I even tried, and I thought people would judge me for every little grammar mistake or my thick American accent. Little did I know, they all felt the exact same way about their English. This is the first thing I ever wrote in Dutch. Not a single sentence of it is correct or really even makes any sense, but I was really, really proud of this. About a month or 2 later, I wrote this. Pretty much still gibberish, but definitely more complex gibberish. And I don't know exactly when it happened, and it definitely wasn't all at once, but eventually I became fluent in Dutch, and my friends also noted their improved English skills. I quickly realized that they didn't care if I was perfect, it just mattered that I was trying. My friend Ploon and I would spend entire chemistry classes just trying to see how many random words I could pronounce. I didn't learn Dutch by taking the back seat and slowly perfecting it. I learned it by messing up big time and making an absolute fool of myself. I learned Dutch only by letting go of my absurd affinity with perfection. Perhaps the most exciting lesson that I learned last year was the power of saying yes. On my exchange, I made a point of saying yes whenever people asked me to go do things. This led me to an array of experiences. Some days, saying yes meant a walk in the woods with my host mom and the dog. Other days, it meant going to explore a city with a friend, going to a cow cuddling farm, or even on the most wild of occasions, it landed me smack dab in the middle of a parade. You can't plan for your grandest adventures. That's what makes them so memorable. All you can do is make sure that they don't pass you by. The most important things that I learned last year, and arguably the most important things I've learned in my entire life, I learned outside of the traditional classroom. There was not a single day on my exchange last year that I was not miles out of my comfort zone, but that's not something that scares me anymore. Comfort zones are a silly concept, something meant to keep you from reaching too high. Once you become comfortable with being uncomfortable, life is an adventure that you are in control of. My exchanger was the grandest adventure of my life thus far, and the best decision I've ever made. The lessons that I learned from a tiny little village will continue to guide me for as long as I live. And so I encourage you to add a little adventure into each day, whether it be as small as trying a new food or as large as moving across the world. You just might learn something new.